And if you look at the structure of formal education in the classroom, it hasn't evolved, it hasn't changed in a very long time. Formal education or self-education, which one is better? Maybe you are just completing high school and you're thinking about going to college for the first time, or maybe you are thinking about going back to school, back to college for more accreditation and another degree or a different degree. If this is you and you are considering that formal education, or maybe you're thinking about learning by yourself or taking other programs or certifications outside of university and you're wondering which one is better, that's what I'm going to talk about today. Most people think of education as something they can only get in a classroom with a certified teacher. But if you look at the word education, the root word is educate. And the word educate originates from the Latin word educere, which means to bring forth and to lead forth. So education was really meant to bring out the gifts and talents, the full potential of students, and to give them scope to develop. If you look at the structure of formal education, it really hasn't changed in a very long time, and it really is something that is imposed from the outside. Formal education is something that's imposed from the outside. So it consists of experiences where you have a teacher standing in front of a classroom, there is a chalkboard or a whiteboard, and you take notes, there are assignments, and then there are exams at the end of semesters or at the end of certain periods of times to test your knowledge. So traditionally, the experience of formal knowledge happens externally through experiences and activities. Now, there are examples of people all around us who are highly successful, influential, and well-adjusted who did not complete a formal education. So this begins to poke holes in the age-old assumption that formal education is better than self-education. And the problem is, this causes conflicts between students and their teachers and their parents. The conflict is there because there's this dualism between the perception that formal education is good for you and dropping out or not getting a degree is bad for you. But the objective fact is that it is neither. Comment below, are you considering formal education or self-education? Where are you at on this consideration, and what are you planning to study? In the modern world, people prefer to learn from others who have successfully done what they want to do instead of learning from professional teachers. And so the key is to evolve to the job marketplace that's always changing, and to make sure that you are relevant and to stay relevant in that marketplace so that you are always having skill sets to offer to who you want to work for. And we know from science that the key to evolution is variation. So what do we mean by that? So let me give you an example. You've all seen those beetles, right? Those insects that are running around, those beetles. If you've ever taken a close look at a beetle, you'll notice that some of them have horns, right? On their head they have horns. And what scientists have found over the years is that these horns are actually a projection of the skeleton of the beetle. And each beetle has a different size. The horn of each beetle has a different size, and they grow on different points of the beetle's head. So why is this important? It's because they found that beetles who have larger, more developed and more extravagant horns, they were able to develop them because at an earlier stage, in their larva stage, before they became adult beetles, they were exposed and they had access to more nutrition. So beetles who have had access to more nutrition at a larva stage ended up as an adult being larger sized beetles and having larger horns that are more extravagant in shape. And those beetles with the more extravagant horns, they're able to defend themselves better. So beetles didn't always have horns, but over time they evolved, and in their evolution they developed these horns which allowed them to survive better. And the reason why they were able to develop the horns was because of variation in their nutrition and the variation of their environment that allowed them access to nutrition. So if that was like, that's not something you might be able to relate to, or maybe you've never seen a beetle before. So let me put this in technological terms. Look at the smartphone, for example. If you look at the first smartphones that came out, or before that, the first cell phones that came out in the late 90s, or the early 2000s, they were very big, they were very clunky, and they were not smartphones. They had physical buttons. Some of them were flip phones, some of them were sliding out, some of them didn't do anything, you just push the button there. But they were cell phones, right? But one thing for sure was that there were so many different types. You can get a Motorola, you could get a Nokia. There were so many different types of cell phones. And therefore there was variation, right? So you had a variation of cell phones. Because there was variation, all these big cell phone companies and upcoming cell phone companies were able to recognize which cell phones would work, which cell phones that the marketplace wanted, and what features that they could develop in the future. Only because there was variation that they could refine the product, right? And so then comes the smartphone, and that's where they realized that people don't want buttons, you know. It was sleek design. They wanted thinner phones, and they started to get thinner. And all of a sudden, they wanted to go on the internet. So then all of a sudden, you have smartphones that go on the internet, and they do everything outside of just dialing a number. So variation is key to evolution. So the key to evolution is variation. And if you look at the structure of formal education in the classroom, it hasn't evolved, it hasn't changed in a very long time. And modern days, there's all of a sudden an introduction of a lot of online learning classrooms. There's been a lot of programs out there, coaches, teachers that aren't professional teachers, but they have the success that you want to have. So rather than asking the question, is formal education or better than self-education or vice versa, a better question to ask is, what is the result that you want? What is the outcome that you want for your career, and which path can get you there? Because a better approach is to say that neither one of them is good or bad, because it's that dualism that gives that conflict. Neither one of them is good or bad. They both can get you an outcome, but the right question to ask yourself is, what is the outcome and which path can get me there? And you might be surprised that maybe both of them can get you there, and maybe self-education can get you there better. So that assessment is what you need to decide, rather than asking which one is better. If you like my content, remember to give me a thumbs up and hit that bell as well to subscribe to my channel so you'll have received notifications each time I upload a new video. And I look forward to hanging out with you in my next video.